It was an impressive operation, made even more so in the brutal elements. Nick appeared by my side. "Which one is ours?" he asked. Galena, our foster dog, was in a shoebox-sized crate. I crouched down and looked through the grate at her sweet face. She was about the size of a large chihuahua and shaking like a leaf. I didn't know how big a beagle was supposed to be, but I thought she'd be bigger than this. We pulled her out of her crate, and Nick ran her around the parking lot, while Erica, the young woman who seemed to be in charge, explained the meds in the bag she handed me. The cranberry pills would prevent urinary tract infections, UTIs, common in shelter dogs because they hold their pee for so long in transport and out of nervousness. There were also heartworm preventatives, vitamins, probiotics, coconut oil, and flea and tick preventative, plus a few goodies, treats, food samples, and a chew bone. She handed me an official folder with Galena's name on it. "When the records are uploaded, print them out and put them in this." I nodded as if I knew what she was talking about and carried it all back to the car, where Nick was putting Galena in her crate. Galena flitted from one side of the crate to the other, watching as we drove, the whites of her eyes flashing. Although it was warm in the car, she was shaking. When I put my hand through the crate wire, she placed her head beneath it and stopped moving, allowing me to pet her. We drove like this until my arm began to cramp from the awkward angle and I pulled it out of the crate. "We have a foster dog," I said, smiling at Nick. "She sure is little," he replied. I'd told the foster coordinator from Operation Paws for Homes, OPH, that we wanted to foster large dogs since that's all we'd ever had, but there weren't any available on this transport. OPH is an all-breed rescue, taking dogs from high-kill shelters in the South and bringing them northward to foster homes in Virginia, Maryland, D.C., and Pennsylvania, where they can be adopted into forever homes. They bring up dogs of every size and breed, even heartworm-positive dogs, pregnant dogs, and litters. I liked the inclusivity of their policies. The idea that any dog or person is worth more than another has always irritated my soul. We were just getting off the Beltway onto I-83, the highway that would take us back to Pennsylvania, when Galena finally sat down. Her head sagged nearly to the floor of the cage in exhaustion, eyes closed. But still, she didn't lay down. She swayed as we made the turn onto I-83. That's when it happened. And while there's never a good time, these things never seem to happen on a pretty afternoon when you're not in a hurry. They always happen late at night on the interstate when it's 5 degrees and you've just picked up a beagle from a bowling alley parking lot. There was a loud thunk and then a waffling sound. Nick pulled the car to the shoulder. We'd blown a tire. It was well after midnight now, and the temperature had dropped a few more degrees. "Now what?" I asked, glancing at Galena, who was back to pacing the cage. "I change it." "Should I help you?" "I got it. Stay here with the dog." One of the things I've always appreciated about my husband is that he can fix pretty much anything. I, on the other hand, am not the least bit mechanically inclined. When Nick and I met, I was using a butter knife to adjust the volume on my stereo because the button had popped off and I didn't know how to replace it. I've always been a person who will make do. I get that from my mom, who grew up dirt poor in the coal mining hills of Pennsylvania. I still watch Nick build furniture and shelves, rewire entire rooms, and install appliances, and wonder how I would have survived adulthood without him. I'm not a helpless woman. I'm sure I would have figured something out. I'd probably be using my cutlery for all manner of tools and tricks. I waited as Nick jacked up the back of the car and removed the flat. I looked out at the cold, clear night, and I thought, I am the luckiest woman in the world to be married to a man who can change a tire in frigid temperatures on the side of a highway at midnight after driving me to a bowling alley parking lot to meet some equally crazy people to retrieve a tiny beagle in a very large crate, and to not curse while doing it. We arrived home near 1 in the morning and offered Galena water and a quick bite to eat before showing her to her accommodations. It had been a long night for us, and even longer for Galena, but she had made it safely from rural South Carolina to our living room. As I watched her cower and shake in her crate, I wondered if I was crazy to have gotten us into this. I knelt down in front of her crate and put my hand out. She regarded it and then backed away from me. Fostering a dog seemed like such a good idea a few weeks ago, but now it was really happening. Here was Galena in